Welcome back to the Jenny McCarthy Show. I'm Jenny McCarthy Wahlberg. You guys all know my love for Dr. Drew. I've talked about him forever. He is literally one of my favorites. He's got his live podcast, Dr. Drew After Dark, happening tomorrow night, you guys, at Caroline's on Broadway in New York City with special guest Kat Vimp and Rich Voss, I should say. The tickets you guys can get at drdrew.com. Dr. Drew is in the
Jenny,
house.
what's happening?
I love you.
I love
and
you too.
know,
It's good to see
I think
you.
I say that every time I see you.
Well, that's what I say every time back to you. So it's good to see you. Really, are you? Now, how are you? Everything good? I mean,
It's going good. I'm
Yeah.
working my butt off.
Yeah,
I'm
I
about
get
to go on my
that.
first vacation. This is not about me, though. It's about you.
okay,
And
I'll let you command the ship.
although I appreciate someone asking me, so it was kind of nice.
You're
but
hoarse. You're hoarse a little bit.
I am.
Right.
You know, the allergies get me really bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah.
Me shouting at people.
Yes,
but
I've had
I'm
terrible vocal cord problems. I really have. Somebody wants to put me laser my cords and put me on vocal rest for a month. Which, when you talk for a living, it's impossible to do.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, people, stop writing. No one
That's
writes to me. I think I actually sound better with a little raspy because I'm from Chicago, and we tend to get a little nasally.
Yeah.
So-
it's a little sexier. It's good.
It's a little bit sexier.
Yeah.
I have so much to ask you about, Dr. Drew After Dark, but and I'm going to talk about all your other projects, but I have to ask you about dolphins first.
I saw.
Because
I saw. Did
what
you
can
see
you-
it? So I saw you
mean,
tweeting about it. I saw and I thought, oh wow, oh wow.
I was like, this is because I watch Drunk History all the time.
I love it.
And when I watch that one, I go, this is number one now. And Dr. Drew, you basically, so people know, I don't want to say hosted, but kind of it. an
I
episode.
take over for Derek Waters for the night. If Derek is of course the guy you see there drinking with the celebrities or the narrators as he calls them, and he was getting worried about his health. Because he felt like he really had to keep up with them. He's very codependent, so he has to drink with them, drink for drink, and this kind of stuff. And so he asked me. I was, I think, the first to replace him. He's done it a few other ways since, but because it works, you just put somebody else in there and you just ask the narrator questions like, how does this work? How's that happening? But this particular story, I remember thinking, okay, this is a career ender. This is how you get in trouble.
You kept saying you're like, oh, it's over. So did they tell you the story before you went in there?
So here's how he does it. So Derek is a genius, right? Have you ever heard the story about how do you know Derek? He'd come in here in a millisecond. Yeah, he's a great guy. And he invented this thing called Drunk History because of a friend of his was telling a story. I forget who it was, about a boxer or something. And he said he just imagined it over the guy's head as he was sort of describing what the boxer had said in this particular circumstance. And he thought, wow, that would be interesting. And one of his first Drunk Histories was with Duncan Trussell, who is the guy narrating the dolphin story. And he's a brilliant comedian. He does the family. I look up the name of the Duncan Trussell podcast. It's like the Family Hour. Anyway, he's genius. Yeah. And so anyway, I fell in love with Duncan off that original Drunk History, which was on the web only. It was about Tesla. I urge you all to go watch the history of Tesla and Westinghouse and what Duncan Trussell does with it. Well, Duncan and I became friends since then, and Derek knows that, and Derek's a friend too, and so he put us all together for this particular story. What they do is they give you a bunch of, I'd call them sort of papers about the story, like readouts about the history, and multiple different perspectives on it, and you kind of read it and study it, and the narrator has to really study it, right? Because not only are they going to tell the story, but they're going to get drunk and try to tell the story. And trust me, they get very wasted. I mean, Derek makes sure they're and the way they do it. Here's the other secret. They tell the story 3 or 4 times. So at least early on in the evening, he has the story complete, pre-wasted. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so that's why sometimes it seems like you cut to them being very deliberate and making sense, and then all of a sudden they're back slurring their words completely nonsensical.
I wonder that. I'm like, they sound coherent. Did they throw up and come back now?
Exactly.
They do get
well, that happens too. But you have to actually be able to tell the story, right? When they get really, really intoxicated. Yes, it's the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. That's what it's called.
The dolphin story, I was dying over because I couldn't believe that it was true. I'm like, this has to be made up.
I'd heard it before. I'd never heard the details. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is true.
How much do you want to get? Can we get into all of it on your show?
I mean, you can get into as much as you want.
It's nutty. It's super nutty, crazy. But how great was Shiri Appleby being the scientist that has to masturbate
unbelievable.
the dolphin?
She was amazing trying to jerk off this dolphin. But the fact that it was funded, that they gave these dolphins acid, and then she was like, you know what, this is too much work. I'm just going to jerk off the dolphin.
Well, because the dolphin was always rubbing up against her, trying to essentially have sex with her. She's like, all right, I need a relief so we can do our teaching or our work or whatever it was that they were trying to do. Yeah, the research was bizarre, made no sense. It was essentially trying to build some sort of ability to communicate with an organism that we don't know how to communicate with. Right. With the premise being that if aliens landed here, we could figure out a way to communicate with them. It's the most stupid S of all time. And it involved, and as it got more and more bizarre, they were injecting these dolphins with LSD, like large quantities, because one of the researchers was an acid advocate, and he felt like he was communicating with the dolphin when he was on acid. It's essentially the story.
I mean, I guess I've taken acid before. I would think the same thing, but I don't necessarily think I would inject it into the dolphins.
Not only that, it's the craziness of that period of time when value judgments were put on brain-altering. We still do it today, but brain-altered experiences, right? And then we go, oh, that was better. No, that was your brain in a different biological state. It's neither better nor worse. It's just a different biology, and it has consequences, and it can be harmful, and be careful, everybody. Literally, you look at the literature during that time, and they will say, well, LSD clearly, causes personality changes in some people, but they seem much better and much more happy to deal. They're much more pleasant people to be around. So therefore, it's a good thing. It's like you're changing the very person. You're changing who the person is, and you're putting and you're judging that to be good. Wow.
Did you ever see that film footage of, I go on deep dives on YouTube about that 1950s housewife that they decided to give acid to?
Tell me more.
Oh my God.
What do you do in your free time, Jenny? This is awesome. Tell me more.
Do weird deep dives. But she's this like perfect housewife, domesticated. She's like in her nice little outfit, and she's like, okay, I'll be part of this. Yes. And she drinks the acid, and they come back later, and she's like, do you see it? Do you see it? And her whole experience is so wild to watch. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what they got out of that.
But it's still, I've seen this footage, but she's still this button-down housewifey person, loaded, having these weird hallucinatory experiences. It's comical to watch. I'm not sure what she got out of it. But to be fair to hallucinogens, although they scare me, I worked in a psychiatric hospital for years, and I used to see just crap loads of consequences so that's where I got scared of them. I would see the horrible psychiatric consequences, but they have utility, and the fact that doctors don't get to experiment with them is bizarre to me, because for instance, at end of life, they clearly have utility. Dealing with end of life anxiety and dread really helps. Might be things like MDMA, clearly helpful in PTSD and helpful in relationship issues, but we got to do more research, bottom line. We got to be able to go ahead.
How do you feel about weed?
I'm agnostic. I don't like it myself, and I have patients that love it, love it more than anything. And so that's how there's a different genetics there, right? Some people just love it, and some people are like, it makes me nervous and anxious, and I don't really get much out of it. And that's a different biology. That's all.
You're right. I smoked myself sober, I think, in college. I smoked so much of it that I was like, I can't do it. It makes me paranoid now.
Yeah, that's what it happens to essentially everybody. If you smoke long enough, it stops making you high, and it starts making you a little paranoid, and it stops working. So people that really love it, when they have that phenomenon, will smoke a lot more in an attempt to get it back, and that makes it worse. Right. And so that's how they get into trouble with it.
Talking to Dr. Drew. He's got Dr. Drew After Dark podcast live taping, you guys, tomorrow night at Caroline's on Broadway, New York City, with special guests Kat Timpf and Rich Voss. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying that. DrDrew.com is where you guys can get tickets. Talk about Dr. Drew After Dark, because I love that you interview comedians, other people. Yeah. Where do you go with them? Tell our audience.
Yeah. So Dr. Drew After Dark is essentially dedicated to, speaking of deep dives, to looking at weird video on the internet. I mean, all the crazy shit that people put on the... Can I say we can curse?
Yes, you can swear.
All the crazy shit that people put on the internet, and they sort of... Tom thinks they're hysterical. I think it's sad and scary. And their listeners liked me watching those videos, so they... Then, and my wife saw that too, and she started talking to them saying, hey, maybe we could do a podcast over on your platform. And the premise is, I watch their crazy videos. with a comedian. We discuss them. I go in deep.
What are some of the videos though? I'm like, give me some.
Well,
ideas.
like there's one guy they're full of kink and drug addicts and bizarre personalities, shall we say?
Okay.
Like the one that pops in my mind is a guy whose fetish evidently is to get in a full head to toe leather outfit and swim in his cesspool. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How do people find these videos?
I don't know. But people send them to them. So they have a dedicated fan base that check out your mom's house. See, it's pretty funny. And then it's lots of bizarre types and lots of drug addicts and lots of.
See, but this is the stuff that I love. It's kind of like why I think people are into true crime, is that wanting to know the psychology of why people do the things they do.
And it starts with astonishment and disbelief, right? It's like, what? How's that possible? How could they? I don't get it. And trust me, I have the same astonishment. Believe me. And then I try to understand. It's still hard. I mean,
It's got to be.
With differing brains, you don't assume other people's brains and minds work the way yours does. That's the first assumption you have to have. So you're trying to use oftentimes people with normal brains are super addled by these behaviors because they're trying to use their normal brain to understand the action of an abnormal brain. Like just simply like a psychopath, right? A psychopathic killer. Psychopaths lack anxiety, lack empathy, lack emotion. Real true psychopaths, they don't actually have emotion. They just behave. They just learn how to behave as if they have emotion. And that's like a zombie. So it's really hard for us to like, what? How's that possible?
Wrap our heads around. You're right.
Yeah,
I was just watching Kemper, a documentary on Netflix about him and him cutting off girls' heads and having sex with the heads.
Oh.
And he did the same thing with his mother. And I'm like, what the fuck?
That guy was in Mindhunter, right? I'm pretty sure he was, yeah. And hey, whatever you're into, man. So no, but
there is a psychology that goes with what do you call it? My brain is farting, but there's symptoms or clues. What is the word I'm looking for? If they hurt animals.
Yeah, there are symptoms, or there are clues that somebody may have this biology, and in childhood, particularly, torturing animals is the first clue. That's sort of a universal problem. And then a seeming, aggression and lack of empathy when they hurt other people. They do not care. And then again, a normal brain goes, what? And they start watching lots of murder porn then, right? Jenny, is that what you watch? All that murder porn out there?
I've never seen murder porn.
Well, yes, you have. No, I mean, all that stuff you watch is essentially, we call it murder porn. At least South Park calls it that.
I'm like, Dr. Drew, I don't watch snuff films.
No, I'm not. It's the way you guys watch it is the way porn addicts watch real porn. And I had to get deep into that stuff back when I had that show on HLN every night, because we did Casey Anthony, and then we did Jodi Arias, and I had a crazy experience with Kobe Bryant with Jodi Arias. Can I tell you the story?
Yes, please.
Somebody gave me courtside tickets to a Laker game, which I'm sure you've sat there, and I would not advise anyone doing it unless they want to no longer be able to enjoy any other Laker games they ever see, because it's so crazy down there. And the athleticism, the intensity, it's like heroin. It's like, okay, I shouldn't have tried heroin. I shouldn't have done that.
Correct.
But it's a great experience, bottom line. And it was Raptors, Lakers. This is a few years ago. It was during the Jodi Arias trial. And, 12 seconds, not even 12 seconds, like 9 seconds left, side out Lakers. And we're on the opposite side from the bench, my wife and I. My wife is in her seat with her hands over her face because it's so intense. We're down by 2.
You're scared the ball's going to hit you.
Well, down by 2. And there's 9 seconds left, and the Lakers have the ball side out. And they, the buzzer rings, they start coming across the court. And Kobe starts walking towards me. And gives me those chin nods, like right. Hey.
Like, what's
and
up?
Literally, first I thought, well, I just didn't see that. Then he did it again, and I literally stood up and looked behind me, like, who's he talking to?
Hey, he's not talking to me.
And he came up to me. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen any human do. He came up to me within about 15 yards and went, we need to chit-chat about Jodi Arias. Boom, ball in, drove the baseline, slam dunk, ties the game. Lakers go on to win the game. It was crazy. Amazing. Did
you ever follow up?
He called me, and we chit-chatted about Jodi Arias. Is
it just because he was like us, wanting to know the psyche behind
yes,
her?
And apparently in the Laker locker room during that trial, they had it on 24/7. They just had it on constant. If you remember, the trial was Sunshine, it was broadcast everywhere, and all those crazy tapes and stuff with oh my God.
You must get confronted by all these people all the time wanting to know the psyche of this or that.
Yeah.
Do you ever get overloaded? Be like, can you just ask me what food I like?
Yes. Yes,
right?
and it depends on it's weird because it depends on kind of what I'm doing in the media at the time. All those Loveline years, particularly when we were on MTV, it used to be all about sex and relationships, and people would corner me with stuff like at the gas station. And like one time I was at like a 7-Eleven, somebody pushed me into the Abba Zappa bars with these crazy questions, and I was like, whoa, this is and what I realized. I'm super codependent too, so I want to help. I always want to help. I always want to like offer something. They're literally asking questions that would take like 3 years to sort out in intensive environments. And I also realized not only are the questions just impossible, but there's no beginning, middle, and end to the relationship when they corner you in a grocery store. Right. You can't go your time. Sorry, I move on to the next patient, or there's no beginning. It's just boom, here they come, and then you're stuck. And then you end with these complicated problems where you have no end in sight. It's hard to go. I'm sorry,
you're codependent.
I'm codependent. I'm sorry, I've got to finish ordering my cantaloupes. I'm sorry, and it's like. It's codependency it's a really interesting. You have a little bit of that? Do you have some of that?
A little bit.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
And so that can be a real asset, right? But it's a personal liability. So let me explain what I mean. So codependency is essentially, if you're like me, you're raised in an environment where you become responsible for everybody else's feelings in the family system, and there's poor boundaries, and you end up one way or another sort of focusing on keeping other people okay because they're dangerous and they hurt you and they traumatize you, and so you just get focused on making sure they don't, if it's an alcoholic, make sure they're not drinking or whatever it is, and it makes you focused out in the world, exquisitely focused on other people, which is an asset, right? You can really kind of feel and be open to what other people are feeling. The problem is that really what codependency is a mobilization of your pain when you feel that pain in other people, if that makes sense. It becomes hard to distinguish your own pain from somebody else's pain. And so when our pain is mobilized, we're forced then to make it stop in the other person. Really what we want it to do is stop in ourselves.
Oh, that's fascinating the way you just explained that.
Yeah. And
because
so
go ahead.
Go ahead. And you got a what?
I was going to say, I get confronted on a daily basis in public with moms who have kids with autism.
Ooh. And
so I can't help it, but I get activated, and then I'm like, oh my God, let me help you. Let's go to the grocery store. Let me save you.
Yeah, I'm your new best friend. So for me, I went to therapy for a long time, and it really helped me get in touch because we didn't get what we needed in childhood because we were busy focusing on other people. What we needed was somebody to focus on us so we could make a good connection with our emotional landscape. I didn't have that, got it in therapy, and then the codependency became an asset because then I could really experience what other people were experiencing and have a boundary where it didn't mobilize all my stuff. Really, it was. I'm grateful for it, actually.
I would say that's very helpful, even what you're saying, for people to hear that Dr. Drew goes to therapy to even fix yourself.
Oh, hell yeah.
How did you then put boundaries up in place safely without feeling like you're hurting people's feelings?
That's the work of therapy. That's what you can't do without the therapy, because it's really hard to do that when you're automatically out in other people's stuff. It's almost impossible. And so when you approach it and you already have a boundary, when you approach their material, you're already holding it differently. I don't know how else to describe it. These are experiential phenomena that are not cognitive. They're not intellectual. They're experiential. They're really bodily based experiences. And so you can be close to the other person, two bodies in space, and not be overtaken by it and not be sort of intruding into it, or you're already holding it with a different kind of boundary. So when you leave, you can leave it without feeling like you've ruptured something, right?
Right.
Because you've never really gone all the way in.
Because there's some people, I've heard say, that are like, I'm an empath and I take on other people's energy,
right? Or
I'm so drained sometimes from giving.
That's right. That's the same stuff. And sometimes I've seen a lot of those people, my wife's got a bunch of friends that are like that, and sometimes they don't have good boundaries, and sometimes they do. So it's healthier, and it's actually better for both people when there's boundaries held.
Do you meditate at all?
I kind of do. At least 30 minutes a day I work out, and during that time that's kind of my meditation. I don't find mindfulness very helpful for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's I always think I'm not doing it right, and I have lots of people that it's very, very important. It just doesn't, I don't know. By the way, in therapy, I had lots of very mindful kinds of experiences. You know what I mean? I had part of my landscape was emptiness, and I had to sort of get into emptiness in the therapeutic context, which is a very strange experience. And it's very, very hypnotic, meditative, that kind of thing. So that was helpful for me.
I mean, I've done it myself, and just for people to understand what your definition of mindfulness is, though, in case they're like, "What does Dr. Drew mean by mindfulness?"
Well, that's a great question, and I mean more the work of a guy named Dan Siegel, who has very specific kinds of ideas about mindfulness. And you're absolutely right. Mindfulness means lots of different things, and it all seems to help equally well, which is the amazing thing about meditation and mindfulness generally, that it seems to be good for the vast majority of people, and probably would be good for me too if I did it right or did it long enough.
How did he define it, though, or how did he say? Was it more of just being conscious and awake and aware in each moment,
yes,
and finding space? Is it that kind of mindfulness?
Yes, and of course to get there you have to focus on breathing and body and sensory experiences. He described it to me as awareness of awareness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't know. For me, I sort of feel like I'm in my body all the time. And they're always like, you got to be in your body and fully present. It's like, I think I am. I wasn't so much connected to all of it very well, and that's what therapy did.
Right.
It's
kind of like I always say, especially with gurus, doctors, therapists, I look at it like a buffet. I take a little here, I take a little
good.
That, I take a little that.
Yeah, good. By the way, you seem super happy these days. Am I right?
I'm so happy.
Yeah, good for you.
I know. It took a lot of therapy, Dr. Drew.
I understand. Me too. and I would describe my happiness as embedded in gratefulness. I'm just so grateful for everything I get to do and be able to be. And you make a difference. I make a difference. And being able to do that and be a part of offering something to other humans is what gives life its meaning. Aristotle used to call it eudaimonia rather than the idea of happiness. It's more like the notion of thriving. Right. And we've lost track in this country of just even what happiness is. We don't even know what we're talking about anymore. It's
so true. Everyone's looking for quick fixes or numbing techniques.
Dude, that's so true. How did we go from dolphin sex to this?
We almost went full circle. We almost went because numbing techniques goes into drugs.
Yes.
But I want to finish on gratitude because it's such a high note. And it's true. I mean, really, once I started really focusing on that and feeling it, not just saying, I'm so thankful, but really feeling it and experiencing it, life got so much better. And it's a great way to manifest.
Yeah, I agree. But you have to be, I don't have a good word for it. I'm going to use the word ready. You have to be ready to experience it. It doesn't get fully, you can't shortcut it. You can't go, today I'm going to feel gratitude. Now, by the way, it's healthy. It's very healthy to think about the things that you are grateful for, and you might be able to find your way to real gratitude, but there's no shortcuts. You have to kind of build a life. I'm sure everyone's grateful for something, your kids, your family, whatever it might be, your health, whatever. We can all find some gratitude, but we should be living a life full of gratitude, and that there's no shortcut to that. You have to do a lot to get there.
I love that. Well said, Dr. Drew. I adore you. I want to come on Dr. Drew After Dark sometime so you can dissect me.
Oh, Jenny, anytime. But I'm warning you, it is. Okay. Listen, this is not for the faint of heart. The love line questions that people ask these days are brutal, and then the videos are brutal. So if you're ready.
I mean, I love brutal.
Okay, all right, honey, we'll get into it. You got to watch After Dark a little bit. Watch like the Jamie Kennedy when I talked before Jamie. It was pretty interesting.
Now I know what I'm doing right after this show. Yeah. Dr. Drew After Dark podcast live taping. You guys go tomorrow night at Caroline's on Broadway in New York City. You guys can get tickets at drdrew.com and also check out Dr. Drew After Dark. I'm doing it. Thanks so much.
Jenny,
I adore you.
It's good to see you right here, right in these circumstances, and I miss you, and I want to see you more. And let's do it.
I would love it. You do this in LA, that podcast?
Yeah, we do it in Reseda because Segura has a studio there for all his different little things on his platform, and so it's all right. Coming to Reseda, and
I'll be there in a couple
Monday
months.
afternoons. All right, Jenny, I'm serious. I'm coming after you. No kidding.
No bullshit. I fucking love you. Let's do
done
this.
And done.
Dolphin and acid and weird videos. Thanks, Dr. Drew.
All right, Jenny.
Talk to you soon. We'll be right back, you guys.
Jenny McCarthy Show. Oh!